Around the Ozarks is now on your FM radio. Listen to Around the Ozarks mornings with Grace Gooley as I spotlight local people, stories, and podcasts, all while playing the country legends of the 90s and the hit makers of the 2000s. It's on the Ozarks' best country, 105.1 The Bull.
Fishing's better when you share the experience. Meet new fishing partners through the Co-Angler app. Offer trips, request trips, connect with anglers in your area, and share the cost. Make every trip more affordable and more fun. Co-Angler, connecting anglers one trip at a time.
Welcome to Beyond the Gate, a podcast sharing the grit, growth, and spirit of rural life. From fields to front porches, this is where the heart of agriculture comes to life. Today we go beyond the gate with a forward-thinking, problem-solving entrepreneur, Jared Flinn, co-founder of BulkLoads. Sir, thank you for joining us and welcome to Beyond the Gate.
Yeah, Jamie, it's good to finally meet you after knowing your cousin or your husband for a number of years. So.
Yeah, and I'm sorry you have to work with my cousin also.
Oh yeah, your cousin. Yeah.
So Jared, we're going to talk BulkLoads and we're going to talk about transportation and logistics and all of that. But first, let's talk about you. Who's Jared?
Ooh, big question. So Jared grew up on a small farm in eastern Missouri, Troy.
I know Troy.
So if you know Troy, big FFA chapter.
I was getting ready to say, as a former FFAer, you guys brought a big bus full everywhere.
Yeah.
Big FFA.
Yeah, so that was kind of my roots, but grew up on a 240-acre farm. Actually, west of Troy. Truxton is actually my hometown, but I went to Troy High School. Our farm was, my earliest memories, it was a little bit diverse. We had row crop, we had cattle, hogs. But some of my earliest memories, early 80s, we had lost it all. And my dad and my uncle, late 80s, ended up getting into the sawmill business. So tied to agriculture, but not really in the farming sense. We had more of the sawmill operations. So that's where I really cut my teeth, but also cut my fingers off literally. And we can talk about that. But I grew up there, graduated from Troy, and went to the University of Missouri, studied agriculture at Mizzou, and then found my way into Kansas City working for a large grain trading company. Worked there for 6 years, met my wife, and she was from the Ozarks, and started coming down here visiting family, and absolutely fell in love with this area. I loved my time in Kansas City, but I'm small town farm kid at heart. And so after we had our daughter, I convinced her to, I said, hey, I want to start this company and I'd love to move either to my area or your area. She said, I'm not moving to your area. So we decided to come down here and we've loved it ever since.
Well, you talked about the 80s. Many people... I remember the 80s, but I was young, but the farm crisis of the 80s, my banking hat that I wear many days, my boss talks about interest rates. And so when we had that influx of interest rates in the last couple of years, everyone's like, this ain't nothing compared to the interest rates of the 80s. And it was really hard for farmers of all shapes and sizes. And so talk more about the sawmill and why a sawmill? What's the area of Troy? What's the terrain of Troy look like to have that demand there? Was it because of the river? Yeah,
I'll speak a little bit on the 80s crisis. And I try to get more and more of the story from my dad. My grandpa has since passed.
Probably still hard to talk about.
Yeah, and they, over-leveraged and high interest rates. And from what I've heard, they had multiple farms and lost those. And he was able to keep the farm that we had during the 80s and 90s, but ended up actually selling it in the 2000s. And my dad and mom still have a little piece of the farm there. So, it's part of the story, and so that's it. But my uncle had the idea of getting into the sawmill business, and back in that time, there was still a lot of manufacturing down in St. Louis, and the two core products that they produced were railroad ties out of the core log, and then we built pallets. And so we had contracts with different manufacturers throughout St. Charles, St. Louis, and that area, all within an hour drive. But some of my earliest memories, I can remember at 8, 9 years old, we would help stack pallets in the back. My uncle and dad still use one of the old grain farm trucks, and we would stack them in the back of that old farm truck, and then my uncle would deliver them down there. But we were so little, I can remember, and I look back, we were running like the main saw blade was 60 inches diameter. And we were 8 years old, like working this far from that blade.
You're professional, so I'm sure.
Well, yeah, but I look back, I'm like, why did I want to let my
parents
kids
let us do.
Yeah, but it was just I have 3 brothers and some cousins, and we all had our station because when that, just like any processing facility or production facility, you had to have several people working at the different stations to keep it all running. But we worked there from the time we were 8 until I graduated high school.
So you head off to Mizzou, majored in ag business, ag econ, logistics, or general ag?
So it was actually so in high school I was trying to figure out what I was wanting to do. And a lot of the guys in FFA, they would graduate and they'd get a job down in St. Louis working the trades. Because one thing, the trades were paying good, and especially they demanded a lot of the farm kids from our area because they were a lot harder workers.
Yeah, they showed up.
Yep. And also there wasn't really other jobs in Troy rural area. If you could go back to the farm, but that was starting to fade as it's still fading today. So I was thinking about that, but I remember my ag teacher, Alan Harrell was his name, and he came up to me one day, it was in his plant science class, and he said, "Flynn, what are you going to do after you graduate?" And I said, "I don't know, Mr. Harrell, probably get a job, working construction, down in the city." And he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Have you ever thought about college?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've thought about it, but I'm not,
Were you the oldest? You said 3 brothers.
So I was in the middle. So I have
okay.
I have a twin brother, a younger brother, and a younger sister that came several years later.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but my brothers from oldest to youngest is like 5 years difference. So my mom,
she was busy.
She was busy. But anyway, so I asked, I told Mr. Harrell, "Yeah, I'm thinking about it." And he said, "Well, why don't we go to visit some colleges?" And he goes, "We can fill out some applications. I'll help you fill them out." He goes, "Get some scholarship," or he goes, "Apply for some scholarships." He said, "There's usually a bunch of local ones that are offered." And he goes, "I bet you'll get accepted somewhere." And he said, "Also, you can get enough scholarships." He goes, "It'll pay for your first semester." He goes, "Do that for me. And if you don't like it, come home. You're out no money. You just did time." So I went home and I thought about it. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound kind of like a bad idea. So I remember going up to the guidance office and I grabbed the applications. It was Northwest Missouri State, Southwest Missouri State, Central Missouri State, University of Missouri, Columbia. Started filling them out. Well, actually, take it back. I did not start filling them out. So I gathered the applications. I gathered the scholarship applications. I went home and I told my mom, I was like, "Could you fill these out? Because I got to work out at the sawmill." Because a lot of times we get home from work and we'd work at the mill till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So my mother filled out all of the applications for me.
She's probably just so thankful that you brought them home and had some interest. Probably,
I've never asked her, but Mom, just bless her heart, she did so much for us. But yeah, she filled them out. I ended up submitting them, got accepted to the University of Missouri. But here was the kicker. When they had a local scholarship award ceremony at Troy High School, I remember going in the gymnasium. And they started calling names. And my name kept getting called for these scholarships. Now, again, I had like probably a low 3-point. I was, not in the top classes. I didn't have the highest grades. But I won more scholarships, local scholarships, than anybody else. And I was just like, how did that happen? So I ended up going to Mizzou my first semester. Studied, I didn't know what I was going to do. So Mr. Harrell said to just do agriculture education. Yeah. He goes, "It's broad enough."
Well, and Mizzou has the leadership component, so you can do the
Yep. So when I first, I was actually on the route to do the teaching side, and then halfway through I switched to do the leadership option.
Well, let's shout out to your ag teacher.
Yes.
And shout out to every single ag teacher I've ever met. Including mine. My dad was an ag teacher. I like to tout myself as a retired ag teacher. I taught for 2 years. No benefits for that retirement package. But the hats that ag teachers wear go way behind the classroom. And those ag teachers were our cheerleaders. They were the ones asking about our future, not just closing the door behind us when we left the class. And so your story is not unique. It's pretty cool to hear stories like this from so many people of the impact that their ag teachers had on them. And so to think that he not only pushed you to go to college, but, he's like talking about your major and how you get through, how you pay for college and things like that.
Yeah, I always look back in that so much more of appreciation for all teachers. But, at that age, we all know this, my daughter, she's a junior in high school right now, and it's a critical, tough time in life to figure out what decisions to make moving forward. So, yeah, hats off to that. But, yeah, went to Mizzou. Studied ag ed, graduated from there, still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I graduated in 2002. The year before that was 9/11.
Sure.
Job market was horrible. People were laying off. Ag companies weren't hiring. Started looking and started applying for different jobs and just nothing. So I stayed in Columbia. And one day I started looking in the Columbia Tribune paper in the classified ads.
A real paper.
Yeah. And there was this ad for a delivery driver, Class A CDL delivery driver. It was like $14 an hour, benefits. And I was like, I got to do something. I'll back up through college, some of my summer jobs. One job I was doing construction and got my Class A CDL to drive the equipment. And so I was like, well, I got my Class A CDL. So I went over and applied. So it was a drywall material company, and the job was being a delivery driver and / sheetrock stocker, which didn't know that much about it. Very, very labor intensive. Still didn't know. Well, anyways, I went over and applied at it was called Rue Materials. And I remember the manager coming up and he's like, you just graduated college? I was like, yes, sir. And he said, you want to stock sheetrock? And I was like, yes, sir. He's like, well, okay. So he hired me on and ended up driving that. I ended up stocking sheetrock for the following 2 years and absolutely loved it. So drove, and again, driving the truck, we had to have a Class A CDL. We pulled this pup behind us. Most of our deliveries were within an 80-mile radius, so it wasn't over-the-road trucking.
Sure.
But I got to know the ins and outs of driving a truck.
Yeah, so what made you get your CDL prior to that?
I was working for a construction company.
Okay, the construction company.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And Did they pay for it?
They paid for it all.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I already had my Class A CDL. Still have my CDL today, Class A. But anyways, I say all that, it really taught me the logistics side and really the operational side of running a truck on the road, like knowing your pre-trip, but really knowing what it really takes to move.
Procedures.
Yeah, but what it really takes to move product from point A to point B. So fast forward, drove the truck for a couple years. The same manager that hired me, one day he said, hey, this dispatcher that's working in our office is retiring. Would you like to move in the office and dispatch trucks plus do inside sales? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Sure. So they moved me in the office and I started dispatching trucks. So then I'm not just driving, but learning how to appropriately manage drivers and dispatch them out. But I also learned, and this is kind of where business started kicking in for me. So I also started doing inside sales, but he started showing me income statements and balance sheets and inventory turns because we were selling product, how to bid on jobs. And it was really cool. Within 6 months, I was like bidding on these jobs and we were winning. I like winning these bids. And I just remember the manager being very excited, like, man, I remember that period when I went in there, like our revenue went up. It was almost, I think it was almost triple what it was, overall revenue.
Wow.
So, and again, I'm still like, I don't know anything. I'm just like, you're just telling me what to do. I'm doing that. But I'll say this, the thing that sticks out with me the most, there was builders that would come in periodically and they would pay their monthly bills. We had a popcorn machine in the office. It was on the bench or on the countertop. But there was this one builder that came in one day and he's getting some popcorn and he says, Jared, I can't wait to see where you go in life. And I was just
he saw it.
Well, yeah, I didn't see it. But I was like, what does he mean by, I was like, oh, I'll probably be working here. And I liked the job. I loved what I was doing. Anyways, I'll say this. So fast forward a little bit, I'm on a float trip in south of Rolla on the Hoozall Valley River.
Well,
it was 4th of July weekend, 2004. I'm in a canoe with my cousin. My brothers are with me. We're down there and having fun. Mm-hmm. And my canoe, my cousin and I are in it, and we literally kind of high center out there in the Hoozall Valley River. And this raft comes down and kind of bumps into us. And I turn around, and here's this woman. She's like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And we start talking. And that's how I met my wife.
That is a story. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have met on the Hoozall, but I don't know how many people have met and then got married.
Somebody told me there's a statistic, like if you meet someone on the water, your probability of marrying them is. But I was like, where did that stat come from?
I love that stat, but like, okay.
So anyway, she was living in Kansas City.
Okay.
I was still in Columbia. We started dating, and I started weekends driving to Kansas City, 2-hour drive from Columbia. And I knew that we were going to get married. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to move up there.
You met on the water, of course.
Yeah, we met on the water. It was meant to be. And so we started talking, started looking at the job market, but didn't know what was I going to do. I have ag degree. I have some trucking experience. Yeah. So one night she's with me in Columbia, and she's like, "Well, let's update your resume and we'll put it online." And this is early 2000s, so this is still, internet's still not that popular, but ended up updating my resume, posted on careerbuilder.com. 2 weeks later,
I remember the website.
Yeah. 2 weeks later, I'm not dispatching, but I'm out on a job. I think we had a sick driver or something, but I'm stocking sheetrock, and I get this call, and it's this recruiter from Bartlett Grain Company. And I remember answering the phone. He's like, "Hey, this is Andy Traub, Bartlett Grain Company. Do you have a minute to talk?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he's like, "Well, I saw your resume, and 2 things popped up on it that we're very interested in. Mm-hmm. It says you have agriculture experience, or you have an agriculture degree and trucking experience. We'd love to speak with you." And that was like on a Wednesday, and he's like, "Could you be up here Friday?" And I was like, "Well, let me talk to my boss and see." Anyways, drove up there that Friday, and at that time, Bartlett Grain Company, still privately owned, but their corporate office was at the Kansas City Board of Trade building.
Yeah.
Right on the plaza. So Bartlett had the top, there's 6 floors, and Bartlett had the 6th and 5th and some of the 4th floor. Mm-hmm. But I remember going up there, and actually I should back up just a little bit. Right when I graduated from college, I never owned a suit in my life. And my grandparents, before I graduated, I was back home, and my grandparents on my mother's side, we were talking to my grandpa. I was telling him, like, "Yeah, I'm getting ready to graduate, but I still need to get a suit. You know, I know a lot of people." Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Let me talk to your grandmother." But I remember Grandma coming up in Columbia and buying me my first black suit.
Aww.
So that Friday, I was wearing that black suit for my very first time for that job interview with Bartlett Grain. But I remember going up the elevator, opening up on the 6th floor, and red carpet, mahogany or walnut wood. I mean, but like...
Very formal?
Very formal. And Bartlett at that time, I think still today, everyone dressed formal.
Yeah. So
shirt, ties. But I remember walking in and, like, again, small town farm kid going to a big city, like, I am out of my element.
Yeah.
But anyways, went through the interview. They brought in a lot of the heads of the commodity, head of the wheat division, corn, milo, soybeans. Go through this interview and go home. Well, I spent the weekend up there dating my wife. Ended up going home that next week and get a call, and they wanted me to come to work. And so I ended up going up there to Kansas City. That was in 2005. And again, knew nothing about, so I told you, I grew up agriculture. And Troy, there's
traditional
Lincoln County, there's crops and all that. But we didn't, by the time I came around, we weren't farming grain. So I had very little experience knowing, I knew the basics of grain. Well, I went up there, and my first week on the job, I'm trying to figure out how all this works. And my job was, you're going to be a truck logistics person for the wheat group. You're going to book trucks. We're going to buy this wheat out of Kansas and Colorado and Oklahoma, and your job is to call these trucks and get it booked. I'm like, okay. So trying to figure this out. Well, this is what I remember the most. My first week, we had this conference room up on the 6th floor, and it was all glass, and we call it the fishbowl. But all the commodity managers, we would meet in there, and that first week, they invited me in, and afterwards, I'm introducing to all the different commodity managers and roles, and the vice president of the company came up and introduced himself. His name was Jack Moran, and he's an older gentleman, very big, broad, dressed super sharp, just always very clean. And he said, Jared, I just want you to remember something. We are a logistics company that moves grain. And I said, okay. And I start thinking about it. I'm like, I thought we were a grain company. I thought we have all these terminals. I thought these guys are trading grain. And I just what did he mean by we're a logistics company? So it just kind of led me on a path of what does that mean? And so what it meant was grain, broadly, if you think about it, most grain companies today are big supply chain companies. Most of them, the companies are very successful. They're moving it through the supply chain the most efficiently. So they're moving it from the farm to elevator to terminal to feedlot to flour mill to barge vessel. But those are the companies. So it just led me on a path of really realizing that. But then I also realized how important the trucking element was. Because everything usually everything starts on a truck. So
and that's where you got your foundation. So it just made sense that that's where your brain went.
Yeah. So I started just really looking at how to maximize that. But here's also I learned the other reason how companies they move grain, but where they really make the money, they move lots of it. Because most times these trades that traders make in grain, usually they're trading maybe 5-10 cents a bushel. That's the margin they're making. But where they make the big bucks is they're trading millions and millions and millions and millions of bushels. So I started putting two and two together and be like, if I can find more trucks, that allows these traders to buy more grain, to ship more, and we all win. And so I started matching loads up, having fun with it, and it just blew up. Within 6 months, they moved me to head of truck logistics across the company. So I wasn't just working with the wheat group, I was working with the corn, milo, feed grains, fertilizers, wheat mids, all these different commodity groups, and absolutely loving it. Well, then I needed help, so then they hired a person to work with me, and we kind of had this group. And it was just a fun time. I look back, and I don't know why, but I had just so much fun trying to figure this stuff out. And I think if anything I've learned about myself, I love, when I went there, I wanted to be the best truck logistics person that ever worked there. That was just my heart. The other thing, too, the role I had, there was some very successful entrepreneurs before me that were in that same role, back in the 80s, that went on to create mega companies. One was Paul DeBruce, which a lot of people may not know. He went out and founded DeBruce Grain, which ended up selling to Gavilon, now owned by Bunge. But grew it to a 1,000-employee, multi-million-dollar business. The other one was Bill Ryan, who started Ryan Transportation, which also owns RTS Financial, multi-billion-dollar company up in Kansas City. So I also was looking. I was like, wow, this role it's breeded some really good individuals. So right. So there was probably good pressure to be like, man, there's something about this trucking element that creates opportunities. So kept going through a lot of cool opportunities, but one of the defining moments for me was having a lot of success, but was married. My wife and I told you we were driving back and forth to Springfield. Well, my father-in-law, his name's Rob Voss, he passed away 3 or 4 years ago. Very successful entrepreneur, very successful businessman. He actually was from here in Springfield. He went to go work for Walmart back in the late 70s and worked his way up to senior vice president of Walmart. He was one of the guys that co-founded Sam's Club.
Oh, okay.
So my father-in-law, if you read Sam Walton's book, Made in America, my father-in-law, I think he's in chapter 8, but talks about Rob Voss and just the success. So being married to my wife, we would go visit, and my father-in-law would always just talk business, and he would talk about Sam Walton and just some great sage wisdom, just talking about some of the things Sam Walton would do and talking about the value of a customer or lifetime value of a customer and providing value. And I mean, just I call them these Samisms, that he learned.
Yeah.
But he would coach me on that. And I think it was like 2009 or 10. We're down at his lake house on Table Rock Lake. And every Sunday we would always, early, we'd get ready to head back to Kansas City. And we're washing cars. He always loved to wash cars. And he always washed ours, which I was never going to turn down. Yeah. But he would always wash our car before we went back home. And we're washing cars. And he said, Jared, what do you plan to do with your career? And I was kind of like, almost like I kind of take it back because like I've kind of worked my way up.
Yeah.
Like
You're proud.
I was proud. I was in the corporate team at part of the executives at Bartlett and doing really well. And I was like, well, I think I'm doing good. I like what I'm doing now, and I think I can kind of keep going up the ladder. And he said, okay. He goes, I just want to give you some practical business wisdom. I said, okay. He's like, in my career, I found out there's 2 ways for financial success. He said, you work for a company that's going to give you equity or stock like I did working for Walmart. He said, or you go out and build it yourself. So I remember getting in the car, heading back to Kansas City and just starting to ponder on what he was saying. Like, what did he really mean, And it almost kind of just stirred, like, was he not proud of me? Was he trying to tell me to do?
Got you thinking,
yeah,
though, in a good way.
Yeah. So that's really what kind of sparked the interest of, like, I loved what I was doing. I loved the success I had with Bartlett, matching up all these carriers. But I started thinking, like, is there a way I could do this for the industry? Like, could I take some of these processes that I've learned, even some of the technology that we built at Bartlett? We had built some technology that helped us manage truck logistics and automated some of the dispatching and stuff like that. So I started looking at that, and that's kind of where BulkLoads was born. So in 2011, left Bartlett, and myself and another co-founder, Matt, started BulkLoads. And there's a whole other story. Matt, my business partner, he's farm kid from Minnesota. His family actually grew up in the cattle business, cattle trading business, large cattle trading company. So had his roots in agriculture, but he kind of went down the route of technology. He went and worked for a big healthcare system doing their back-end IT stuff. But ultimately, he had the entrepreneur bug, and he wanted to start something. Well, he realized that there was opportunity in creating basically these marketplaces where you could match up trucks with loads. Matt had did that before we met, doing it with livestock, and he still has a website today called livestocknetwork.com where they match up cattle loads. But we ended up meeting, and he said, hey, why don't we do this for the grain industry? So in 2011, we started BulkLoads.com.
So going back to that problem statement, that I guess you kind of mentioned it multiple times of, the quantity of trucks versus to increase that quantity. So when was that first, you talked about your father-in-law and him kind of stirring the pot for you to start thinking about entrepreneurship. But when did you that's the problem I can solve, and that you were the best person for it, meaning BulkLoads is the answer? Yeah,
so there were other solutions out there. So I wouldn't say that we just created it from cold turkey. There were already other software products out there, but I kept saying there's ways that we can automate this. The other thing that I left out earlier, in 2008, a little device called the iPhone came out. And we started looking at how is that going to change the game of booking loads with truckers? Because now these truckers, they all already had phones, but now they can get text alerts, or they could download an app, and we could automate that way. So that was another thing that really kind of sparked interest to say, hey, could we do more with technology than what some of these other players were out there? So that's really what sparked it, to say, I think we could do this better than anybody else out there.
So, bulk trucking, what does that mean? When we're talking about your mission, your customer, when we're talking, and we've talked about grain, but it goes much further than that. So who is that core customer for you?
So BulkLoads, what we are a marketplace where we connect trucking companies in bulk, and those, when I say bulk, hauling grain, feed, fertilizer, aggregates. So the trailers.
No live animals.
No live animals. So think about, and a lot more people, it's more about the trailer types that we deal with. So like hopper bottom trailers, in-dump trailers, walking floors, pneumatics, belt trailers, liquid tankers, all these bulk. So it's raw materials. So these are trucks that are hauling those raw grains, delivering to an elevator. They're delivering them to a feed mill like Tyson Foods. They're delivering them to a river terminal on the Mississippi River like ADM up in St. Louis. Those are the guys that we deal with. But we're essentially helping those guys find loads to haul. And it can be new business, it can be recurring business, it can be a backhaul load. So maybe a guy's hauling a load out to, San Antonio, Texas. He can use our program, our marketplace, to find loads coming back. So that's who we serve. So we have companies like ADM, Tyson Foods, even local companies. MFA is a big customer of ours. They will post loads on our marketplace, and those will match up with carriers online. That's what we started in the beginning. Since then, though, we've grown so much more than just the load board.
So taking us through that, because you talk about these big companies, Tyson's, MFA, ADM, and but an individual, like independent hauler, can also, they're the ones receiving that information to book it, right?
Yep.
Okay. So take me through that process. I am a new independent driver and I want to be more efficient with my loads. I want to hop onto your marketplace.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Most people don't realize the trucking industry is very fragmented. If you're in Springfield, you think of the biggest trucking company right here in town, Prime.
Yep.
They run, last I heard, I think close to 10,000 trucks. Crazy amount. They got to be in the top 10, maybe top 5 largest trucking companies in the United States. If you take Prime and all these mega carriers, let's just say with 100 plus trucks or more, they represent less than 5% of the whole trucking industry in the United States. Less than 5%. So that other 95% are owner operators. They're usually 5 or less trucks. So a lot of them, it's, in our perfect scenario, typically we deal with a lot of guys, they farm, they bought a truck and trailer to farm with, well then they need to diversify. The farming, grain industry's down, cattle business is down. Hey, what can I do to utilize this equipment that I have? They get commercially licensed, and then we help those guys find loads. So they can download our app, they pay us a subscription, and then they can easily find loads that are in their area, or they may be taking a load somewhere and match up. So we're helping them get on there. But it's as easy as once they download our app, pay their membership. And again, we don't charge per load or anything like that. It's a flat rate subscription. You can use it as much or as little as you like. But they may pull up a load from Springfield, Missouri, going to St. Louis. They click on the load, it gives them all the load information, and they can click to book it. And you go. We've also now, and I can get into if we have time, we've created another services so we can actually follow that whole load life cycle. So now we even help pay the driver for the load. We provide the driver.
That was my next question.
Yeah, we provide them with insurance. Yeah, we've tried to really take all those friction points off the driver so we can really let them focus on driving the truck and running the business and not all the hassle stuff.
Well, and I think that, so those independent owner-operators are your bread and butter.
Yes. That's 85% of our membership are those small owner-operators. So
I want to talk more towards the end about the other things that you guys offer. But I want to think a little bigger picture and the entire, the trucking industry, the transportation industry. Local, Springfield, Missouri is a big hub, or I-44, St. Louis, the rivers, railroads when we think of Kansas City, those livestock markets that were once there. What is the state of our local state transportation industry? What's the buzz? What's happening? I know it drives our entire economy, but I don't think we think about it a lot. We don't talk about it. I think we probably think about it and we yell and cuss at all the semis on the road when we're driving on I-44 and stuff like that. But our economy would shut down if they weren't in operation. Yeah,
here in Springfield specifically, if you look at our corridor, we got 2 major highways that come right through Springfield. But 44 highway that comes through here, it's one of the only highways that goes both north and south and east to west. So people don't realize the amount of traffic. Well, actually, people do realize.
We do realize.
Yeah, because they complain about it. But it is a major, major hub. And that's why if you drive up the highway from here up through Stratford, all the way up to Marshfield, there's trucking company after trucking company after trucking company. I'll say this.
Under construction constantly.
Yeah. Most of those are more trucking companies in the general space, where we're more in the bulk space, which is more niche. When
you say general, they're hauling a specific commodity.
Yep. When I say general freight, I'm talking about most of them are hauling. They're pulling dry vans. They're hauling palletized stuff. It could be dry goods for Costco, Sam, Walmart, Target, all your different retailers. Where the bulk guys that we're dealing with, those are hauling raw ingredient materials. So our guys are doing more of those materials that are going into those processors, where the general freight haulers, once they go after the processor and become a bagged thing of sunflower seeds or whatever, that's what these companies are, and we don't deal with those.
So, okay, we talk about how that impacts us locally. I mean, how has the global economy, how is this trade talks, and I don't want to get into politics and all that kind of stuff, but how have they impacted today's logistics market?
In the general freight, it's impacted substantially, and I'm not as educated on that, so I won't go in the weeds, but I'll say this. For our bulk guys, it hasn't changed. And there's actually, he's a banker. He also owns a trucking company. Riley George is his name, really good friend of ours. But he talks about this. He said, if you look at the general freight market on a graph, it's doing this big, big curves. But if you look at the bulk, what we're doing, it's like these tiny little squiggles. So we don't see those big ups and downs. And you think about it, like we're producing, our guys are hauling feed, fertilizer, grain. A lot of that stuff, it's not recession proof, but it really doesn't impact. Most of these farmers, where we see big fluctuations in our market, it's going to be like pretty different. I was going to say like real droughts. Well, I mean, it's weather
Those
conditions.
Extremes.
Yeah, so you get real extreme weather conditions, flooding. That's what impacts us more than anything when you look at like bulk hauling.
So we talk about your mission and how that's grown. So you start out solving this kind of finite problem, and that's to find more trucks, essentially, and to put more trucks on the roads to haul more product. And when was that kind of tipping point where you're like, okay, this is working, and I want to expand and go further?
So 2011, we started BulkLoads. Our goal, it was just Matt and myself. Our goal was like, hey, can we get to 1,000 users? If we get to 1,000 members, that would provide enough income for us to support our families and, continue to serve. It was within 18 months we hit 1,000 members.
Clearly a demand.
And then we said, man, can we get to 2,000? And then 6 months later we get to 2,000. And again, 3,000, 4,000. And so we're like, wow, this is going beyond our dreams. But at the same time, I was still working in the business day to day, talking to truck drivers. And if one thing they teach you about business or just anything, listen to your customers. What are your customers telling you? What do they need?
The boots on the ground.
Yeah. Well, one thing I heard, and I even heard this even beforehand, starting BulkLoads, but in our industry, trucking is very costly. It costs a lot of money to run that truck up and down the road. Well, that trucker has to front a lot of that cost. So he's got to pay for all that fuel, the insurance, all that before he's ever getting permits. Yeah. But so there's a lot of costs built up before he's ever getting paid for that load. Well, a lot of these guys, they can't wait that long. On top of that, a lot of these big companies, the bigger they get, the slower they are on paying carriers because they're more powerful. They don't have to. So we were talking to some of these truckers, and they're like, hey, Jared, we love your load board. We're growing. We're hauling this freight, but I'm hauling for ADM, and I'm not knocking ADM, but ADM doesn't pay us for 45 days. So if I haul
After the load's complete.
if I haul a load today, I mean, it's almost 2 months before I'm getting money for that. I can't wait that long. So we started looking like, how can we help these guys? Well, there are companies out there, they're called factoring companies, and they basically buy receivables from trucking companies. So say a trucker hauls a load for $1,000. They'll say, hey, we'll buy that receivable from you and charge you 5%. So they're giving him 95%. They're going to give him $950. They take that receivable, then they invoice it off, and then they collect and they make $50. So we started looking at it like, well, could we do that? Well, one thing, I almost despise factoring companies. I worked with them at Bartlett Grain.
Yeah.
A lot of these were very predatory. They were kind of like quick payday loan places.
Okay.
And if you look at trucking, usually 8-10% is the total margin in the load. Well, if you give up 5 or 6, like there's no more money left for that trucker. So we started looking at the idea, and I told my business partner about it, and he's like, well, that's good, but we don't have the money to do this, and we're busy with BulkLoads. So I actually ended up pitching it to a lady who I worked with at Bartlett. She was working for another grain company in Omaha. Her name's Rachel Biesterfeld. And I was like, hey, I think there's opportunity here if we can put this together. So in 2014, we started Smart Freight Funding, which is a factoring company, and we buy those receivables or fund these loads for these drivers. What was crazy, when we put all this together, we actually got a line of credit for $70,000 with the bank, thinking that was going to be enough.
There's never enough.
Within 2 weeks, we drained all $70,000 paying receivables out on it. And we actually had advertising on BulkLoads. At that time, we were getting so many drivers signing up, we had to take all of our ads down because it's like, we can't sign these guys up. We don't have any money. So we had to go back, work with the bank, and continue to build that up. But never would we have dreamed of how much demand there was out there. So we kept growing it. Rachel's from Omaha, so that business is actually domiciled up in Omaha, Nebraska, just west of there. She ended up building out a team, a lot of her friends and family, and but now she's got a team of 30 employees that work up there. And
do they work exclusively with BulkLoads?
So there's BulkLoads, and then there's Smart Freight. We promote Smart Freight through BulkLoads. So we pretty much all the customers that we have on Smart Freight come from BulkLoads. It goes hand in hand. But yeah, it's grown today. We process close to $30 million a month in receivables.
So you talked about not liking those factoring companies when you were at Bartlett. So what sets this apart? Why are you doing that better? Yeah.
So if you look at our Smart Freight website, at the very top, it says, we hate factoring companies. And that's why we became one.
Yeah.
So the big things that we did, that we offered that were very predatory out there that we don't do, we don't make any driver sign contract. So because there's some of these factoring companies, they have to sign a contract, and say a driver's transmission goes out, even though that truck's down, he's still got to make payments to the factoring company. Like he's got to have minimum amount of revenue going through. Just ridiculous. So we don't do any contracts. You can factor as much or as little. So if you are hauling for, let's just say MFA pays quick. You don't have to run that through us. Where other factoring companies make these truckers.
It depends on that load.
Yep. Yeah, you can bill some direct. You can let us process some for you. We charge less than 3%, so a lot more affordable. So we've taken all the friction points out, and I think that's where it's grown. But I say the other thing too is, we're using the BulkLoads brand, the trusted brand, to deal with helping these guys get paid.
It doesn't feel like a third party.
It doesn't feel like a third party. And again, we, with myself being one of the owners, like I said, we're very big on trust. And again, it's one thing for someone to trust you to find loads, but when you're trusting someone to handle your money, that level of trust.
The portion of your business, yeah. So you talk about trust. You start BulkLoads, and it's a business. It's for profit, but you've created a community.
Yep.
And you talk about listening to your customers, those drivers. So expand upon what that community means to you, and how, knowing a few people that get to work with you and have seen the business grow. I've seen that community and your local team, your local employers. But what does that mean to you? And why is it more than just a business? It's a community for you.
Yeah, I'll tell you a couple stories. So one thing I didn't realize back then that we were creating, because we would have members sign up from California to New York to Florida. And this is 2011. Facebook still, people are using it, but not Facebook groups. But one time I had a customer, a member reach out, his name was Wes Croslow, and he said, Jared, he goes, you've created a community of like-minded people where I can share and talk business with someone in Pennsylvania that I would never have known. And I guess that's when it kind of dawned on me. It's like, wow, there's more than what we're building than just finding loads. Like we're creating a sense of people have a belonging. I'll say that's number one. Number two, I talked about coming from small town America, Troy, rural. I grew up, knew the hardships of farming and agriculture. I didn't say this earlier, but like never wanted to go into agriculture, if I'm completely honest. Like I knew it's what I knew, so I did it. But like I even said I studied it, but like I did not want to be part of agriculture. The agriculture that I saw back home, nobody made money. And it upset me. It's like I didn't want that same lifestyle.
Growing up in that time period, it's all anybody really saw, you know, for agriculture. And to want to be a part of it, I can't say that I went to college to major in ag because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I could talk behind a mic and call it agriculture. I mean, that didn't exist then. But I don't think I did either. And I don't know if any of us were like, I want to be a farmer. It's all we knew. And it's what we were exposed to. And we created these networks as young people. And I listened to your story. I know you had a network. I mean, think of what your ag teacher pushed you to do. But I guess there's opportunities for it. But it's so hard.
Yeah. So going back to creating that community, the other aspect, small town America, I said I seen the hardships of it, but I seen a lot of people not make it, and that bothered me. And even when I worked at Bartlett, some of these trucking companies I would talk to, they'd 6 months later call them and they'd be out of business. And I didn't like that. I was like, how are these guys not surviving? What are they doing?
You knew there was a demand.
Yeah. So that led me on another path of trying to figure out, like, how can we slow down the churn of truckers going out of business? Because it does. It pains me when I get emotional, but you see somebody, because he or she's providing food on their table. And like, how do we make them successful? And I think that's where the brand has gotten today. Like, we're not just in the business of loads, we're in the business of providing prosperity for small town America. And that's the mission that we're at. We want to help these small owner operators, all different sizes, but really thrive. We want to give them the tools and skills to do all that. And that's why, I've started a podcast. I started that back in 2018, but it was to be a voice out there, but to bring people on and share best practices. How can we help truckers do better at what they know or in the industry? We started a conference 4 years ago. We just got done with our conference here in January. We started, 180 people showed up our first year. This last year, we had almost 700, and it's so cool.
So is your audience those independent owner-operators?
The conference?
Yeah.
It's owner-operators, shippers, brokers, but we had people from Manitoba, Canada, from California. We've even had people show up from overseas, which I don't know what value they're getting out of it. But yeah, that's the community that we've created. And it's been, I would have never dreamed that community is so valuable and so special.
So Jared, you have this local company that has a community feel, but it has a global impact. What's next for BulkLoads? Big picture.
So actually I was going to talk to you about this after the broadcast.
Oh, okay. So off the record.
I was talking about, we built this brand, got the podcast going. We've moved the podcast to video over the past couple of years, and we've seen our YouTube channel just explode. And some of these views getting, we did a video, and it was actually at the Springfield Underground, which does a lot of agriculture. But I mean, it's just shy of today 900,000 views on YouTube. But we've seen that a lot of our audience can be reached through social media, specifically video. So we've gone out, we go out and film customers and tell their story. I know you said you love storytelling. It's been one of the things that I just absolutely love. And I guess I want to tell the story of small town America and farming and agriculture. So that's been number one for me, and how we get that executed. We have a team. There's 5 total on our media team. We have editors, videographers, our head of videography. So we're pushing that out. We're looking at a TV series show. We're with a production company right now. I think a dream of mine, and this isn't to pat Jared on the back, but I'd love to get a documentary on a Netflix or Amazon Prime, but just telling the heart of small town America. And I think, like I said, the thing about us, we have the customers and the members to do it, and they want to share their story. I think that's the hardest problem for people to get. We have all that. We just need to connect the dots, and we're already doing that. Like last year, I'm guessing here, but we went out and filmed. I mean, we release a video every week, but we released like 40 big feature films of following these trucking companies, these small and big farmers, but companies where it started with 1 truck and now over 100 trucks.
Well, it's so relatable because, I honestly, I know a lot about agriculture, or I know a lot about little things in agriculture, but like the transportation side, you live and breathe it every day, but I don't know much about it. But I can relate myself into so many of the stories that you shared. And as a listener or as a consumer of media, of social media, of podcasts, of video, of all those things, we want to be able to picture ourselves in that. And because of the diversity in your member base, everybody can see themselves in someone. Yeah,
because we have, I won't go into details because there's one other element, but we're featuring a salt company in Salt Lake City. They harvest salt off the Great Salt Lake to a company that does wine up in Pennsylvania. We just did a cotton farmer in Tennessee. So we're just getting like all facets of agriculture across America, an onion farmer in Washington. And again, a lot of this relates to Bulk, our mission. So it all kind of intertwines with farming and agriculture and trucking. So that's my number one. That's my passion, where I spend most of my time doing. Number 2, and I haven't publicly said this.
Okay.
So,
you don't have to publicly say
it. Yeah, but I want to know how I can impact agriculture. I mean, I can do it. We're having success through BulkLoads and our social media, but I never want, I'll say this, I don't ever want to be a politician to be a politician. But if I can serve in a way, shape, or form to help agriculture in the United States, I want to figure out a way to do that. And I want to do it just as a passion. When I was younger, I wasn't able to join the military. I told you I had a sawmill accident, had 2 of my fingers removed, and it didn't allow me to join the military. And so I guess deep down, I want to give back to America what America's done for me, and I think I can do it by serving agriculture and telling the story of small towns. So not saying they're not doing it good up in Washington, but I would love to be a part of that in the future.
Well, I think that from a fellow storyteller to a fellow storyteller, there's never too few stories that can be told. And I think that someone who's passionate about that, there's so many great voices out there. And that's what I love what I do. So, Jared, let's go back to your 18-year-old self. You talked about, the farm and working in a family business and FFA and college and all those things. But what would you tell that 18-year-old self based on what you know today?
That's always one of those questions because you don't want to tell yourself something that would change the trajectory of your life.
Well, it's hypothetical.
Because there's been a lot of moments that I wish I would have dodged.
What would happen if you didn't go on the Who's All that day at that time?
Yeah. I think if I could sum it up, I would tell my younger self to be more fearless. I was growing up, a lot of things just always worried me. I never thought, to be honest, I was always worried about graduating high school and disappointing.
So when your ag teacher said, "Hey, college," you're like,
yeah. But even when I went to college, I didn't think that I'm going to start, but I'll probably never finish, And I never even finished. So my wife, I even ended up getting my MBA in graduate school up in Kansas City. But so those are the things, and I think I would tell my younger self, man, keep going for it. Don't let fear get in your way. I think there's been so many times I've let it stand in front of me instead of pushing through.
Well, Jared, thank you for joining us and letting us go beyond the gates of BulkLoads and your life and your history. Where can we go? Where can we listen to this podcast? And where can we go to learn more about BulkLoads?
Yeah, you can find us anywhere. But I would say if you want to find me personally, very active on LinkedIn. That's my jam. I love LinkedIn. I post a lot of content on there daily, sometimes multiple times daily. So yeah, just search Jared Flinn on LinkedIn. If you want to check out BulkLoads, if you are in trucking and specifically bulk trucking, we welcome you to check out BulkLoads. But even in other elements, we didn't get into the hard, but we also offer insurance and other stuff that isn't directly tied to bulk. So if you're in trucking or freight brokerage, we'd love to talk to you. There's some opportunities there. I'll say this too for your audience. We've been growing. We now have close to 80 employees, but continuing to grow the company. And if you're in 417 area, and we'd love to talk to you. I think for us, we love finding those people with like-minded, they have faced adversity in their life, and man, they want a challenge. So man, if someone's out there looking for an opportunity, I'd love to speak with you.
Well, thank you, Jared. And we look forward to seeing what the future holds for you and your company.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Beyond the Gates. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. New episodes drop every other Wednesday. For more content, follow Around the Ozarks and Beyond the Gate on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe to the daily newsletter at aroundtheozarks.com. Join us next time for more stories of grit, growth, and the spirit of rural life.